And I think a lot of times we think of purpose and we talk about it in the singular, like it's one thing. And what I found in my life, it has been several things. When I was young, when I was playing basketball, when I was an athlete, I felt that was my purpose. When I was in law enforcement, that was another purpose. And now, in all honesty, as I'm probably coming to the end of my life, my purpose, my focus has changed again. And it's to put as much goodness, positivity, motivation, love back into the world as I possibly can with my experiences and the things that I've learned during my life, but certainly during this cancer journey. And so what keeps me going are what I call my 3 F's: faith, family, and friends. I have a very strong faith in God. I remember, as you said, when I had my leg amputated, I also found out I had tumors in my lungs. And those are what I'm still being treated for every 3 weeks. And I remember about 6 months after I had my leg amputated, I was with my oncologist, and he showed me my CAT scan, my CT scan of my lungs. And I have no medical background. I don't know how to read a CAT scan, but you can kind of look at it and say, well, that sure doesn't look like it belongs there. I had these big tumors in my lungs, and I had fluid all around the pleural spaces. And I remember looking at my oncologist and saying, how was I alive? And David, I'll never forget this. He put his head down, he shook his head no, and then he lifted his head up and looked at me, and he said, I don't know, because you shouldn't have been. Which said to me that God's not done with me yet. You know, when I die, where I die, how I die, way above my pay grade. So I don't spend a lot of time worrying about the dying part. Spend more time focused on the living part.
This episode of the Life and Leadership Connected podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. My name is Dahlén and I am your host. In this podcast, we talk about life purpose, our why, that it gives us meaning and direction for what we do in life. We talk about life and leadership. What gives us life? How do we become and continue to be good leaders with great impact on other people? How do we combine life and leadership in a healthy and sustainable way? These are questions we will discuss in this podcast. If you want more information, go to lifeleadershipconnected.com, lifeleadershipconnected.com. I'm your host and coach, Dahlén. Let's dive right into this episode.
Hello and welcome to the new edition of this Life and Leadership Connected podcast. Today, the special guest is Terry Tucker. And as I usually do, I will give a short presentation of who Terry is. He's an author and a sought-after motivational speaker and a former college basketball player, a former SWAT Team Hostage Negotiator, a former high school basketball coach. And he has a Bachelor of Science degree in Business and Administration from the Citadel and a Master's degree from Boston University. He's a marketing executive and a business owner, founder of something called the Motivational Check LLC. And this can be found online. And he's a cancer warrior fighting the sickness since 11 years back. And this sickness, he took his foot in 2018. And in 2020, he took his leg. He speaks about mindset and self-improvement and focus on healthy aspects of being sick. And the book he's written is called Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. And he has been featured on magazines like Authority, Thrive Global, and Human Capital Leadership. Is there anything I missed, Terry?
No, David, I appreciate being on with you, and I think this is going to be a fun conversation.
Thank you. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
You have done a lot of things in life, Terry, and can you tell me a little bit of yourself? what has led you to your present situation?
Yeah. So I grew up on the south side of Chicago, one of the larger cities here in the United States. I am the oldest of three boys. You can't tell this by looking at me or by hearing my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall, and I actually went to college on a basketball scholarship. When I graduated from college, I was actually the first person in my family to graduate from college. I moved home to find a job. This was really going to date myself now, long before the internet was available to help people find employment. Fortunately, I found that first job in the marketing department at the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the fast food hamburger chain. That was the good news. The bad news was I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mother care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. You touched on my pretty much my professional life. I've had a lot of jobs. I've done different things, partially out of interest and partially out of a respect for my father, who wanted me to go into the business world. And then I guess just finally, my wife and I have been married for 30 years. We have one child, a daughter, who's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is an officer in the new branch of the military here in the United States, the Space Force.
Mm-hmm. And you have a business background, and can you tell us a little bit of your leadership experience acquired earlier in life, and maybe some important lessons you learned and that is useful for you today?
Yeah, I think I was incredibly fortunate to play team sports. I started playing basketball when I was 9 years old and played all the way up until I was 21. And I'll give you an interesting story about the things that I learned being part of a team. Part of my business career was I was in the marketing field. And I remember one time I was interviewing with a company in a marketing capacity, and I was interviewing with the senior vice president. And we spent an hour and a half, 90 minutes. And that entire time, he asked me about what it was like growing up, what my family life was like, what high school was like. I had 3 knee surgeries in high school and 1 in college as a result of basketball, what that was like, what my college experience was like. And when we were done, I had to ask, I said, we spent an hour and a half together. You didn't ask me one question about business, about marketing, about my philosophy on things. And he said, I've got plenty of people around me that'll tell me if you're good at marketing, if you'd be a good fit for our team. He said, but I want to hire people of good character. And I believe character is developed in the first 20 years of your life. And that's why I asked you all those questions about your experiences during those first 20 years. He said, because I believe character is caught, not taught. You're not going to read a book and say, okay, I'm a person of good character now. You're going to develop your character based on the relationships you have, based on the experiences you have. And that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question. But one of the biggest things that team sports taught me was the importance of being part of something that's bigger than yourself. You realize on a team that if you don't do your job, not only do you let yourself down, but you let your teammates down, your coaches down, your fans down, etc. And if you think about it, the biggest team game that we all play is this game of life.
Yes, very, very true. Thank you. And part of your story is also that you worked as a SWAT team negotiator, and I mean, you're from America. I'm from Sweden and Europe. I don't think we are so familiar with that, what that means. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences and some lessons you learned from that?
Sure. So I kind of have to go back a little bit. And my grandfather, my dad's father, my paternal grandfather, was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. And he was actually shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious injury. He was shot in the ankle. But my dad always remembered, my dad was an infant at the time. He remembers the stories my grandmother told of that knock on the door of Mrs. Tucker, grab your son, come with us, your husband's been shot. So when I expressed an interest in going into law enforcement, my father was absolutely not. You're going to go to college, you're going to major in business, you're going to get out, get a great job, get married, have 2.4 kids, and live happily ever after. But that's the life my father wanted me to lead. That's not the life I felt I was drawn to lead. And so I had a choice when I graduated from college. I could have said, sorry, Dad, I know you're dying, but I'm going to go blaze my own trail and I'm going to get into law enforcement. Or out of love and respect for you, I will do what you want me to do and I will go into business. And so understanding the backstory, that's sort of my resume. I went into business because my dad wanted me to. And I sort of joke, I did what every good son did. I waited till my father passed away and I followed my own dreams. So I got onto the police department when I was 37 years old, which is pretty old to be getting into that line of work. And SWAT is, we always used to say that when people need help, they call the police. When the police need help, they call SWAT. And so we were kind of a rapid response team for critical incidences. And we were divided into two groups. One was the tactical team, which was made up of the men and women who had all the toys, the guns, the armored cars, the tear gas and stuff like that. And then there were the negotiators, and that was us. And we used to joke with the tactical team that if we did our job correctly, they didn't get to use any of their toys and things like that. So we were basically trying to negotiate with somebody who was more than likely having the worst day that they've ever had in their life. Their house was surrounded by the police, and they were talking to me. And so we were trying to develop what any relationship needs to be successful, and that was trust. And I guess I'll leave it at that. If you've got more questions, I can go a little bit deeper on how we did it and things that we learned so that we were able to be successful at it. But that in a nutshell is kind of what we did as negotiators.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, you said the work, you need a lot of trust in that work. What did you what experience from that work did you bring with you? Did you find useful for today?
Yeah, we did. I mean, this was all about communicating and developing trust with somebody you never met in your life. You have no idea who this person is. And the first thing that we were taught was this formula. And the formula was 738-55. And it had to do with how we communicate with each other. So 7% of how we communicate a message with another person are the words that we use. And think about it. We agonize over, I got to get the right words, whether we're sending an email or a letter or we're talking to somebody, but that's only 7% of the message. 38% of the message is the tone of voice that you use in communicating those words. And then 55% of how we communicate a message is our body language and our facial expressions. So as negotiators, we weren't with the person that had a gun and was barricaded in a room. So we didn't have that 55%. I couldn't say something and look at you and see you kind of roll your eyes and think, oh, what an idiot. I can't believe Terry said that to me. That's not the case at all. So we had to figure things out based on what people were saying, what they weren't saying, and how they were saying it. And we used what was called tactical empathy. Help me understand, David, if you were the person I was negotiating with, David, help me understand what's going on or why we're here or what's important to you. We used how and what questions. We stayed away from why questions because why questions sound accusatory. Well, David, why did you do that? Oh, wait a minute. Is he accusing me of something? I can get to the same information by saying, well, what got us to this point, David? That's a much softer question that'll get me the same information. So tactical empathy, helping me understand, not necessarily agree with what you did, but help me to understand it. And then how and what questions. And then the last thing I'll say about this is we would do what's called parroting or mirroring, where you would say something, And I would take either the most important words or the last 2 or 3 words and just parrot them back to you and then go silent.
Yeah.
And at least have 5 seconds of silence, because as human beings, we don't like silence.
Yeah.
We like to fill that silence. We like to fill that void with talking. So if I go quiet, it's going to prompt you to start talking again, which is exactly what I want you to do, because I want you to burn off a lot of that emotional energy so that you can get to a point where you're not using your emotional brain, you're using your rational brain, because we all make better decisions with our rational brain.
It sounds this sounds a lot like coaching.
It does. It's absolutely like coaching. And we had a psychologist that worked with us. And the way we trained is we would do different scenarios. We would play roles and stuff like that. And where you learned was in the debrief, where you would get together with everybody and the psychologist might say, hey, did you ever think that person might be schizophrenic and off their medicine? Oh, that never occurred to me. So there was a lot of making mistakes in practice in our training, so that we didn't make those mistakes, or we could recognize things when it mattered, when lives were on the line and things like that. So yeah, we had a great psychologist who coached us on a lot of different things.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. Life sometimes doesn't, life sometimes change in directions we don't like. And that happened to you 11 years ago. And you got cancer 11 years ago. And, as I said in the beginning, you lost your foot 2018, and 2020, you lost your leg above your knee. And I think I heard you say in another podcast that you go on a cancer treatment every 3rd week, right? Yeah.
I do. Just finished a week. I'll start another week in 2 weeks. So I get 2 weeks off in between my treatments.
Yeah. But today you're sought after motivational speaker and author, and you've written the book Sustainable Excellence: The 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life, and you're founder of the Motivational Check LLC. I'll expand I'll give you the question very soon here. One question we ask in this podcast is like this: tell me about what gives your life within the area of focus you have chosen to spend most of your time in your life, and how you keep your energy at high level day by day. I wonder, Terry, what has given you life and energy to start doing these things and keep it going every day, in spite of your physical condition?
Yeah, that's a great question. I kind of go back to when I graduated from college, and I mentioned my father was dying of cancer. My dad had end-stage breast cancer back in the 1980s, and they didn't really know how to treat a man with breast cancer back then. And so they told him to go home and die. They didn't really say it that way, but they pretty much said, there's nothing we can do for you. And he lived another 3.5 years, and I believe he did because he had a purpose. He was in real estate. He loved real estate. He actually worked up till 2 weeks before he died. And I sort of tucked that in the back of my mind and said, when it's my turn in the barrel, when I have to go through something that is causing adversity in that I need to have that purpose. I need to have something to do. And I think a lot of times we think of purpose and we talk about it in the singular, like it's one thing. And what I found in my life, it has been several things. When I was young, when I was playing basketball, when I was an athlete, I felt that was my purpose. When I was in law enforcement, that was another purpose. And now, in all honesty, as I'm probably coming to the end of my life, my purpose, my focus has changed again. And it's to put as much goodness, positivity, motivation, love back into the world as I possibly can with my experiences and the things that I've learned during my life, but certainly during this cancer journey. And so what keeps me going are what I call my 3 F's: faith, family, and friends. I have a very strong faith in God. I remember, as you said, when I had my leg amputated, I also found out I had tumors in my lungs. And those are what I'm still being treated for every 3 weeks. And I remember about 6 months after I had my leg amputated, I was with my oncologist, and he showed me my CAT scan, my CT scan of my lungs. And I have no medical background. I don't know how to read a CAT scan, but you can kind of look at it and say, well, that sure doesn't look like it belongs there. I had these big tumors in my lungs, and I had fluid all around the pleural spaces. And I remember looking at my oncologist and saying, how was I alive? And David, I'll never forget this. He put his head down, he shook his head no, and then he lifted his head up and looked at me, and he said, I don't know, because you shouldn't have been. Which said to me that God's not done with me yet. You know, when I die, where I die, how I die, way above my pay grade. So I don't spend a lot of time worrying about the dying part. Spend more time focused on the living part. And the other two things I mentioned are my family, been a tremendous asset and help for me during this. And then my friends, you know, people that I thought would be there for me no matter what happened, no matter how bad things got in my life. When I got cancer, some of them were, Terry, I can't deal with this. I was at 51 years old, like you're a young man. I can't deal with that. And they kind of moved away. And then there were other people who I never thought would be there for me that have never left my side during this journey. So, you know, I really think life is, yeah, it's about you, but it really is the connection that we have with each other.
Okay, thank you. You have developed something that you've called the Four Truths, and you do it. You have done it to encourage and guide and support the audience to speak to. I'm wondering, what are these? Can you mention what these Four Truths are, and why and how do you find these important?
Yeah, the Four Truths, I actually have them here on a Post-it note in my office, and I see them multiple times during the day. So they constantly get reinforced in my mind. And they're just one sentence each. And I'll give them to you. The first one is control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. The second one is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life, and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more resilient individual. The third one I look at as kind of a legacy type of truth, and it's this: what you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. And then the fourth one I think is pretty self-explanatory: as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. And I talk about these four truths kind of as the bedrock of my soul. I think they're just a good place to start to try to build a quality life off of. I don't purport to have all the answers. I don't tell people if, hey, you implement these four truths in your life, it's going to work for you. I don't tell people that. But what I tell them is they have worked for me. And I think about those when I make decisions on business projects that I'm going to be on, or places I want to speak, or even treatments that my doctor recommends and things like that. I think about how those play out and affect me and my family in my life. So they're the bedrock of my soul. Like I say, they're immovable. They're things that I absolutely 100% believe in and that I practice every single day. You know, the one about embracing pain and difficulty. You know, how do you do that? It's pretty simple. You do things you don't want to do. And I recommend everybody, every day of your life, you should do at least one thing that scares you, that makes you nervous, that makes you uncomfortable, that's potentially embarrassing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. But if you do those small things every day, when the big disasters in life hit us, and they hit all of us, we lose somebody who's close to us, we get let go from our job, we find out we have a chronic or a terminal illness, you'll be so much more resilient to handle those things when they present themselves.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're going to take a short break here for a couple of minutes or so, and we'll come back very soon.
Sounds good.
Dear viewers and listeners, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you want coaching and be coached towards purpose, be equipped for life and leadership, or find ways to a balanced life, then go to lifeleadershipconnected.com, lifeleadershipconnected.com for more information, and to sign up for a free consultation call. I am your coach, David Dahlén. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Life and Leadership Connected podcast. We listen to Terry Tucker. And Terry, I have another question here that I usually ask to my podcast guests. Tell me about your leadership of yourself and others, and about some challenges and milestones that have shaped you to the person you are today, and the most important lesson you've learned as a leader. And to put us to, I will change that question a little bit to fit in your context. My question is, what leadership lesson has life taught you so far through your experiences? And how would you say that it has shaped you as a leader of yourself and other people?
Yeah, I think leaders need to be people that care about other people. If leadership is about you, then it's not leadership. It's just about you. Your life should be about making people's lives better. And there was a person here in the United States who died back in 2003, who was very instrumental in the development of children's television programming here in the United States. His name was Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers. And when Fred Rogers died in 2003, his family was going through his effects, and they found his wallet. And inside his wallet was a scrap piece of paper on which Mr. Rogers had written 4 simple words. And I think these 4 words kind of really determine what leadership looks like. And those 4 words were: life is for service. Your life should be about service. I mean, in the Marine Corps here in the United States, there's what's called the Fortune 500 companies, some of the biggest, most important companies in the world. But of the Fortune 500 companies, 163 of those companies are led by people who were former United States Marines. And the Marines put a tremendous emphasis on leadership, on, the leaders eat last. You don't tell people how to do things. You tell them what the mission is. You ask them to come up with a plan. You support them in that plan in terms of, what do you need from me? What products do you need? What services? What do you need to implement that? And that's all about helping people become better, helping people reach their potential. And I think that's what leadership is about. And I've been lucky to have coaches throughout my life that did that cared more about me as a human being than they did about me as a basketball player. And I think that's one of the biggest things. If we can foster and grow other people, that's really what leadership is all about.
Yes, thank you. And you spoke about purpose before, and I will maybe can develop it a little bit, because the question I usually ask is like this: what gives you purpose, meaning in life? What is your why, your purpose, your motivation for what you do? And you said in the other podcast that purpose is plural for you. What do you mean by that?
I mean that, we tend to think that, and it would be great if this could happen, that our purpose has to be aligned with our job or our occupation. It doesn't. I mean, your job could be over here. It's what you do to pay the bills, but your purpose is over here, and it's to be a podcast host, to be a painter, to be a writer, to be an activist, whatever you feel is in your heart. And whenever I speak, especially to young people, I always tell them, if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you believe you are supposed to do, but it scares you, go ahead and do it. Because at the end of your life, the things that you're going to regret are not going to be those things you did. They're going to be those things you didn't do. And by then it's going to be too late to go back and do them. So, people always ask me, how do you find your purpose? I think we all have unique gifts and talents. I mean, if you told me to go be an accountant, I would say I will fail miserably at that, because those are not my gifts and talents. Math and numbers are not my gifts and talents. Writing, reading, things like that, words are much more up my alley. So we used to always tell our daughter, play to your strengths. What are you good at? What are your unique gifts and talents? And then try things with the understanding that there's no perfect anything in this world. There's no perfect relationship. There's no perfect job. There's no perfect family. Nothing is perfect. But what can you do in your life that you can't wait to get there and do it when you get out of bed in the morning? If you have that, I can't wait, let's go do it, that's probably going to be your purpose. And part of that is it's not the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's not the top of the mountain. Where you find your purpose is in the journey to those places, to the pot of gold, to the top of the mountain. It's putting in the work. It's doing the ugly, hard, difficult things that make you better, that make you more resilient, that really foster and develop who you are. And somehow I think we've gotten to a point where we think that successful people, however you define that, have never failed. And I can promise you that the road to success is paved with failure. So I would get out there. Actually, one of the chapters in my book that I wrote involves fail often, especially when you're young. Get out there, make mistakes, because you're not a failure unless you don't learn from those mistakes. If you make mistakes, you learn from them and you apply them. That just makes you a better human being.
Yes, thank you. And if you would, in a short sentence, or explain what is your purpose, Terry? What gives you meaning, and specifically?
Honestly, right now, as I'm going through this cancer battle, it's just really to put as much goodness, positivity, motivation, love back into the world as I possibly can. Like I said, I don't have all the answers, David. I wish I did. But what I like to do is say, look, I'm coming to the end of my life and I've learned some things, and I'd like to give those things to people that they can pick and choose. Hey, yeah, that works for me. No, that doesn't work for me. And that's all I want to do. I want to, I've been asked many times, how do I want to be remembered? And my answer is, I don't want to be remembered. I'm not going to be remembered. 100 years from now, nobody's even going to remember that I was here. But what I want to do is I want to connect with people. I want to have that relationship. I think if the COVID pandemic taught us anything, it's how much we need each other. During COVID, you saw alcoholism rates go up, drug abuse rates go up, domestic violence rates go up. We're not good alone. We're much better together. We're much better at developing ideas, developing leadership, developing companies, developing ourselves with other people. And that's what I always tell young people, especially. If you remember nothing else I say, remember this: your life will absolutely 100% end up based on the 5 people you hang out with the most. If you hang around with people that are smart, that are motivated, that want good things, you'll be smart, you'll be motivated, and you'll want good things. Versus if you hang around with people that are always negative, that they think life revolves around them, there's no service component, and that everything is terrible, then that's the life you'll end up being. So be very careful with your time and the people you hang out with. Hang out with people that make you better, not people that make you worse.
Thank you. You wrote this book that we spoke about several times now, and you have 10 principles in there. Can you maybe share one or two of those principles that you think is very important, and a little bit about that?
Sure. So the one I just shared is about failing often, especially when you're young. I think that's incredibly important. I wrote all 10 of them, but it's always fun for me as an author when somebody reaches out who's read the book, because there's always one of the principles that resonates with them, that really kind of captures them. And that's a great place to start a conversation. And that's true for me. Even though I wrote all 10, the one that resonates with me is this: most people think with their fears and their insecurities instead of using their minds. And I know I've done that, David. I know I've, wanted to do some, start a business, whatever. And I pull back. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I, don't have enough information. What will people think about me if I fail? that's thinking with our fears and our insecurities. That's not thinking with our minds. So that's absolutely one. There's a chapter or a principle entitled "You Are the Person That You're Looking to Become," and that really goes back to when I was in business. I really felt I was a police officer. I really felt that that was my purpose. I wasn't there yet. And in all honesty, and I don't mean to sound conceited, one of the things that I'm most proud of in my life is the fact that I never let my purpose or my dream die. I always knew I wanted to be in law enforcement. And like I said, I was 37 years old when I got into law enforcement, which is pretty old to be getting into that line of work. But I never let that dream die. And I've seen so many people that had dreams, goals, missions, purpose in their life that just got to a point where they were comfortable and like, you know what? I got a decent job. I'm making good money. Things are good. Why rock the boat? Why try to do something different? And they give up on their dreams. And then when they get to the end of their life, that's one of the biggest regrets that they have. I don't have that regret. I found my purpose in life and I lived it. So when I die, I can honestly say, you know what? I was put here for a reason. I found that reason. I lived that reason. So it's okay to die now. I feel fulfilled. And I think that's an incredibly important lesson that we all should learn. Don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up on your purpose.
Thank you. Thank you. A last question here that I usually ask every guest in my podcast. Tell me how you successfully combine your role as a leader of yourself and other people and your life as a healthy human being. What challenges, any success factors? So I wonder, how do you balance your life today, Terry, work and the rest, and with family?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't mean to laugh, but sometimes my wife and I kind of have a disagreement because I will be a week at the hospital in cancer treatment, and then I'll take 2 weeks off and I will do podcasts, or I'm working on another book, or I've written a chapter in a book that's coming out next month. And my wife will always say, "No, you need to rest." And I always kind of joke with her, I get plenty of rest when I'm dead. This energizes me. This gives me purpose. And that purpose makes me feel better, makes me want to continue to do things like that. So again, it's understanding that I don't have it all figured out, but I have some things that have worked for me that I like to offer to other people. And that's really what I want to do. And I want to connect. I've had so many great experiences. I've been on almost 700 podcasts around the world, and I've connected with so many people that have cancer, people that have other diseases, people that don't, people that they're in business or law enforcement or medicine and want to talk about those particular things. And I love the connections that I have with those people. I love the ability to reach out to them. And that's what energizes me. That's what, like I said, what I leave behind is what I weave in the hearts of other people, that third truth. That's what I'm doing. If I can offer you something that you can use and you can remember, and you can remember me because I gave that to you, that's the gift that I give. And I want to give people things. I don't want to take things. And I always feel, David, and I'll end with this. We seem to think that we're born empty, and that when we get out of school and we get into life, that our job then is to fill our empty self up. We've got to get a college degree, for example, or I got to get a great job. I got to make a lot of money. I got to drive the nicest car, live in the nicest house, have the latest technology. And what I found is we're not born empty. We're born full. Every one of us is born full with everything we need to be successful already inside of us. We just need to find where that is, what that is, and pull it out and use it to our benefit. So our job in life should not be to fill ourselves up. Our job should be to empty ourselves out with our unique gifts and talents, certainly for the betterment of ourselves, but also for the betterment of our family, our friends, our community, and our country. And I think if we would look at it like that, it's not about you. It's not about what you can get. It's about what you can give. This world would be a whole lot better off.
Thanks. So true, Terry. Is there anything that you think we have missed to talk about so far, Terry, that you want to share with these viewers?
I guess let me end with a story. Like I said, I go for treatment every 3 weeks. I had a nurse recently ask me that was taking care of me, what was it like to have my foot amputated in 2018 and my leg amputated in 2020? And as I told her, I said, it hasn't been easy. Being 6'8" and learning how to walk again, falling is not an option. You kind of get hurt from this height. So I told her, I said, it's not been easy, but cancer can take all my physical faculties. But David, cancer can't touch my mind, it can't touch my heart, and it can't touch my soul. And that's who I am. That's who you are. That's who everybody who's listening to us is. And we spend a tremendous amount of time working on this vessel, on this body. We go to the gym, we eat right, we get enough rest, we reduce stress. And I'm certainly not telling you not to do that. You absolutely should do that. But what I am suggesting is this. Spend a little more time every day working on who you really are, your heart, your mind, and your soul. We know this body at some point in time is going to die, it's going to decay, and it's going to go away. But our heart, our mind, and our soul, I believe those things are eternal and they will live on. And I just don't think we spend enough time working on those things.
Thanks. Can you just mention again the name of your book for the viewers and listeners and where you can buy it?
Yeah, the book is called Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. And you can get it anywhere. You can get a book online, wherever you get your books. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. I don't know if you have those in Sweden. That's another large book manufacturer. You can get it at Apple iBooks. Anywhere you can get a book online, you can get Sustainable Excellence.
Yeah, thank you. And if people want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, I have a blog kind of / website called Motivational Check. Every day I put up a thought for the day. With that thought usually comes a question about how maybe you could apply that thought in your life. I have recommendations for books to read, videos to watch. You can leave me a message. That's all at motivationalcheck.com.
Okay. Thank you for that you joined this podcast, Terry. You said some end thoughts before, but is there something else that you would like to end with? Some quote or something that you think is very important?
Yeah, let me end with this quote. Ernest Hemingway, one of our great writers here in the United States, had this quote, and I think about it a lot of times, especially through my cancer journey. And the quote is this: life breaks everyone, and afterwards, many are stronger at the broken places. And I know in my life that's been the case. I think anytime you go through adversity, you face something that you don't think you can handle, you stare down fear or whatever it ends up being that you don't think you can deal with, and then you do deal with it, you make it through it, it makes you stronger, it makes you more powerful, it makes you more resilient. So understand that life is going to break you from time to time, but if you keep going, if you keep healing from that break, you'll eventually be stronger, not only in your personal life, your professional life, but also in your heart, your mind, and your soul.
Thanks, Terry. Okay, dear viewers and listeners, this is the Life Leadership Connected podcast. Thank you for your listening and viewing, and we'll be back in about a month's time. Usually, as you know, we usually release a new podcast in the middle of every month. So take care until then, and see you soon. Bye-bye.